Apollo 11, the first humans to walk on the moon. The year is 1969, and humans are about to do the seemingly impossible. They're going to put foot on the moon for the very first time. We often forget that we have really only been exploring our planet for a few thousand years. The vast majority of human history has been spent not knowing what was out there in the great expanse of space. In fact, it wasn't even that long ago that people believed the Earth to be the center of the universe. And now here we are, preparing to set foot on the moon. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to walk on the moon. But this mission almost never happened due to politics, technical issues, and sheer weight. Let's take a look at how they did it. July 16, 1969, the Saturn V rocket carrying the Apollo 11 space capsule lifted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida. At the time, it was the largest and most powerful rocket ever made. Standing 363 feet tall, the rocket was composed of 3 different stages, each with its own engine. The first stage had 5 J2 engines, the second stage had 6 hydrogen-fueled engines, and the third stage had a single J7 engine. It would take more than 100,000 pounds of thrust just to lift the rocket off the ground. Once in space, the third stage would come in much more handy. The Saturn V was designed to deliver the Apollo spacecraft all the way to the moon, and the journey to the moon and back was going to take several days. The Apollo 11 crew consisted of 3 astronauts, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. All 3 were NASA astronauts who had undergone years of training both physically and mentally to prepare them for the long journey into space. Neil Armstrong was the commander of the mission, and he would be the first person to step foot on the moon. Buzz Aldrin would be the lunar module pilot responsible for landing the craft on the moon, and Michael Collins would remain in orbit around the moon while his 2 crewmates went down to the surface. As the Saturn V rocket sped away from Earth, the 3 astronauts were strapped into their seats inside the command module. The command module was the brain of the operation. It's where the astronauts would live and work while they were in space. It also contained all of the equipment they needed to fly the mission, including the guidance system and the control panels. The command module was also equipped with a docking port, which is where the lunar module would attach to it. The lunar module was the vehicle that would take Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin down to the surface of the moon and back up into orbit. It was designed to be lightweight and maneuverable so that it could land on the moon's surface, which has very little gravity. The lunar module also had a few scientific instruments on board, but its primary purpose was to transport astronauts to and from the surface of the moon. After several days of traveling through space, the Apollo 11 spacecraft finally reached the moon. The 3 astronauts had to perform a series of complex maneuvers to get the spacecraft into orbit around the moon. Once in orbit, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin began preparing for their descent to the surface. They checked their equipment one last time, and then they strapped themselves into the lunar module. At 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time on July 20th, 1969, the lunar module, now known as the Eagle, separated from the command module and began its descent to the surface of the moon. As the Eagle approached the moon, Neil Armstrong took over the controls and guided the craft down onto the surface. At 4:17 p.m. Eastern Time on July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human to set foot on the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that is the way we learn and grow as a species. This was said by John F. Kennedy in 1962. He wanted to beat the Soviets to the punch. President John F. Kennedy gave the world a new vision of American purpose during the darkest days of the Cold War. We will go to the moon in this decade, President Kennedy declared before a joint session of Congress in 1962. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do other things not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that is the way we learn and grow as a species. His words inspired a nation and set in motion a series of events that would change the course of human history. But why the moon? Why did we want to go there specifically? Well, the simple answer is that the moon is the closest celestial body to the Earth that we can actually reach. It's only about 384,000 miles away. And because it's so close, it appears relatively large in the sky. The moon is also relatively easy to navigate. Its gravity is much weaker than the Earth's gravity, so it's easier to move around on the moon than it is on Earth. And because of its weak gravity, objects fall very slowly on the moon. This makes it easier to land a spacecraft on the moon than it does on Earth. For these reasons, the moon was the perfect place for humans to go to explore space for the very first time. But why did we want to explore space in the first place? Well, the reasons are many. For centuries, humans have looked up at the stars and wondered what else is out there. We've always been curious about space, and that curiosity has led us to explore it. In recent years, we've learned a lot about the universe thanks to various telescopes and other spacecraft. But we still don't know much about it. There is so much out there that we don't understand, and that lack of understanding drives us to explore. We want to learn more about the universe and everything in it. That's why we send spacecraft like Voyager and New Horizons out into deep space. And it's also why we sent Apollo 11 to the moon. But there are other reasons why we want to explore space. One of the most important reasons is that it helps us to understand our place in the universe. When you look up at the night sky, it's hard not to feel small. The moon, the stars, and the planets all seem so big and so far away. This can be intimidating, but it can also be very humbling. It reminds us that we are just a small part of something much bigger than ourselves. This can help us to put our problems into perspective. When we are worried about something happening on Earth, it can be helpful to remember that there are much bigger things going on in the universe. This can help us to calm down and focus on what really matters. But there is another reason why we want to explore space, and that's because it's an adventure. There's nothing else quite like it. When you go into space, you see the Earth like you have never seen it before. You see the curvature of the planet and the thin atmosphere that surrounds it. You see the blue oceans and the white clouds and the green land masses. You see the Earth as a whole, and you realize just how special it is. You also see the universe in a new way. You see the stars and planets and galaxies in a way that you have never seen them before. You see the beauty of the universe and the wonder of space. This is an experience that changes people forever. It's an experience that I think everyone should have the opportunity to have. The success of Apollo 11 was a monumental achievement for humanity. It proved that we are capable of some truly special things when we set our minds to it. It showed the world that we can accomplish anything if we just try hard enough. But it also showed us the importance of space exploration. It showed us that there is so much out there beyond our planet that we don't understand and that we have so much to learn. It showed us that the universe is a beautiful and wonderful place, and that we are very lucky to be a part of it. So the next time you look up at the night sky, remember Apollo 11 and all that they accomplished. Remember the courage and bravery it took to get where they did, and remember the importance of space exploration. We have only explored a tiny fraction of space, and there is so much more to see. So let's go out there and explore it all. Let's learn more about the universe and everything in it. Let's push the boundaries of human knowledge and understanding. Let's go out there and find out what else is out there. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. We also have other videos about space and the moon that you might enjoy. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.